ask, how many times did I drop the mic?
Thanks. Okay, guys, we're ready to go. Anybody outside, fellas? Okay, they're not paying attention. Anybody outside? We got everybody in? Okay. Okay, we have an hour and a half, and as Ron just said, lunch is on your own. Okay, so, and then what's our start back time, Ron?
What's that?
What time do we start back after lunch? Is it 1:30?
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock, okay. Okay, so we got a lot of ground to cover. Any surprises so far? Okay. Okay. As we progress, I'm going to start working up here with my chicken scratch diagrams and stuff. You'll probably recognize this stuff and you won't have to keep notes or anything, but we do need to touch on it. Before we get too far down the line, I did a presentation about, well, could you see if there's some cleaner stuff or something to go with that? That'd be very helpful. I did a presentation in about 2001 to the Explosive Distributors of America, the dynamite dealers for the mines. And they were at the Hotel Del Coronado in San Diego, this nice place. And they wanted to know about GPS. And because they put antenna arrays on the drills, and they can, set the drill angle and the depth and selectively put overburden and ore body, in different places based on the science of that explosives. And so I started my presentation with Boudreaux was standing on the street corner, and he had this cubic foot package and tape wrapped around his body. Just standing there, and his friend Thibodeau came by and he said, "Boudreaux, what that is on your chest?" And Boudreaux said, "Well, you know that friend of ours, Henri Brown?" And Thibodeau said, "I know Henri. We grew up with Henri. That's not answering my question. What that is on your chest?" Boudreaux just ignored him and he continued. He said, "Every time he sees me, he takes his knuckle and he thumps me in the chest like that. It hurts like hell." Thibodeau says, "Yeah, he does that to me some more too. I don't like it either, but you're not answering my question, what that is on your chest." Boudreaux says, "It's dynamite. Next time he does it, I'm going to blow his damn hand off." These guys kind of liked it. It was like, I'm going to, let's talk about, as soon as we get some cleaner here, perhaps.
They're running down to see if they can find something.
Okay, good. The aliquot part, just a brief word about that. Evenly divisible with no remainder. So in an aliquot part descriptions, no gaps or overlaps, correct? Because it's a quarter of a quarter or something like that. Which brings us to, have you ever seen a legal description where it says the northeast quarter section 2? You've seen that before? What they meant was lot 1, section 2. But it's not an aliquot part. That never existed. The northeast of 2 never existed. It's always been lot 2 or lot 1 of section 2. So when you see a description that says the east half lot 1 section 2, how do you handle that one? This is for the boundary class actually. But since it's not an aliquot part, we would normally divide it by midpoint, on the north and the south line, strike the dividing line. So east half by distance, like you would an aliquot part, right? But this isn't an aliquot part, so you can't do it that way. So that's kind of the differences there. If you see that description, east half lot 1, section 2, I think it's more appropriate to switch over to state rules to do that. So do it east half by acreage, right? Put it that way.
California courts, half is half.
That's right. So, and I thought, okay, nobody really does this. Nobody really does that. But I actually saw this in play. It was on an assessor's plat, believe it or not. And the landowner's land was the east half lot 1, and the east half of the southeast northeast. Okay? The east half of the southeast northeast, Aliquot Park, we'd split that one midpoint on the north and on the north boundary and the south boundary. East half of Lot 1 was by acreage, and they had a jog there. They actually did it correctly. It was done correctly. So that's the issue with aliquot parts. If you get up, you can't use, lots are not aliquot parts. They're not aliquot parts by definition, because they couldn't make them nominal size. So that's why they're allotted.
Couldn't there
Yes.
be a situation where section 2 was, or that section was elongated, and you could get an aliquot part out of it?
You could. They just keep stacking up until you got to that tier where they couldn't get an aliquot part out of it anymore. Now we get lots again. Have you seen it?
What would happen if it was, the remainder was just real minimal?
They probably would add it to the supposed 40 below and make that 42 acres and make that the
Could you do
lot.
aliquot parts then, or could you describe it that way? Or
No,
it's still a government lot?
It's whatever the plat says.
Okay.
Yeah, it's whatever the plat says. Guys, I'm gonna try this and see if we can get something up here that.
Statement.
Yes.
Recently, we had BLM surveyor come in and survey the boundary of tribal lands because they were adjacent to it and the tribe asked them to,
Tribal lands. Okay.
against BLM. And what they ran into was the northeast of the northeast used to be theirs. It was patented out, but now they acquired it back. So and someone owned the north half of it. So he decided that he had to go by state law because it went into private ownership. And the exchange happened there. And now that it's back in BLM possession or federal possession, at this point, if they split it out, it goes back to the rules of the BLM manual on splitting it out. And I had no idea that once it went into private lands, it became a state law despite, and so he actually didn't get the north half of the northeast quarter. They got exactly a half of that northeast to north quarter.
It's interesting. I'm glad.
Half of the northeast quarter.
I'm glad you bring this up because it plays back to what we were talking about, whether the manual of 2009 or the manual of 73, which one you should have. There's another difference I saw. In the manual of 2009, they call it federal interest land. In the manual of 73, they called it public domain. And there is a difference. A public domain was what never left federal ownership. Land that was acquired and went to private and then came back into federal ownership was acquired lands in the old terminology. Now it's federal interest land to include all of it. Okay, so. You're bright. You need to just stand up here and tell us.
There you go.
Sorry for.
If you wet that, it might.
Yeah, it might. You had something we spoke about before the break. Would you bring it up while we're in a holding pattern?
It has to do with the question on taking the 73 manual and the 2009 manual. I've taken the test more than once. The idea is to pass the test, not to look impressive going in there. You can take 1 million books, you don't have time, you got 4 hours. And if you have all these books, what it's going to become is overwhelming because you don't have time to use them for reference. So you want to be very selective of what you take and keep it to a minimal.
The point being, you got to know your material before you go in there. You don't have time to learn this or look it up on the fly. Yes, sir.
Do you know if the BLM has a publication of the changes within the manual? Sometimes they'll do that.
Yes.
Just simply what has changed.
Go, does anybody know it offhand? I'll find that and post it on the website. There's a comparison of the 73 to the 2009. In fact, I have a PowerPoint that I did for CLSA in San Diego that talks about the differences. And they're not that much difference, but after I think about chapter 5, they started jacking with the chapter numbers, and riparian took up a big block. And then so after, I think, chapter 5, you start having chapter 7's not the same as chapter 7 over here.
Right. But I mean, but the similar topics, what has actually essentially changed?
There is a summary. It's,
Okay.
in fact, maybe Google the manual of 2009, because there was a discussion in there about that before they turned this thing loose. We talked about the section having 8 controlling corners. It's an 8-sided figure. You can't close your eyes to that. As soon as I can get a diagram up here, I'll talk to this.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. This is something I would like to think would come up in the boundary thing, and this is just for something for you to chew on. Let's say we're talking about the west boundary of these 3 descriptions. East half, northeast, northeast. You know how to get the west boundary of that line in. East half, northeast, northeast. Midpoint on the north and south boundary of the 40, right? Aliquot Park. Versus the east 20 acres of the northeast, northeast. That's going to be a line parallel to the east boundary and floated until you bring 20 acres under enclosure. Versus the east 660 feet of the northeast, northeast. Parallel line offset 660 feet. And those are all 3 different descriptions. 3 different, that west boundary is 3 different places based on the description. And I've seen it where attorneys don't know the difference, and they'll do that kind of junk. Okay, let's see if we can keep this together. The section being having 8 controlling corners because the section and the quarter corners were originally set, unless the contrary can be shown. All right, so whatever the record says is what it is. So if the monument controls, there will be a deflection at this corner point, absolutely. Therefore, it's 8-sided. Okay, that's what makes it an 8-sided figure. The deflection may be seconds. It's probably going to be more than that. The thing, I've seen these things as much as 3 or 4 chains out of line. They were in, and it falls back to that fishbone way they did the original survey. So they didn't actually make this tie over here, and the record reflects that they ran all the way through. But so it's an 8-sided figure. Always keep that in mind. The subdivision of a regular section, can anybody spout it out? The procedure to establish the center quarter corner. Okay, here's the way you sing it so it's rhythmical and you can put music to it. It's an intersection of straight lines connecting the opposite quarter corners. Okay, so right there. And that point of intersection is the center quarter corner. All right. To further subdivide the quarter section in a normal or a regular section, we're going to midpoint right here, correct? Say again?
As long as it's not that 1 through 6.
That's exactly right, a regular section, okay? We're going to do midpoint. And then this is something that can get you in trouble. It works a lot most of the time. But if this is a straight line and this is a straight line, then in theory I could connect those opposite 16ths with a straight line and cut that in half. And that's going to be my northeast 16th. The right procedure to do this is by bearing intersection again. Straight lines connecting the opposite 16th corners. And if you don't fall prey to this midpoint thing, do your bearing intersections again. And just always do that. And I'll show you how this is going to come back to help you one of these days. When we're going to subdivide the southwest of the northeast, we're back to midpoint again, right? Midpoint, 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 straight lines connecting the opposite 64th corners. All right? Child's play, right? So, you heard me using some terms. If you guys, we can call this the southwest corner of the northeast quarter, if you like. We can also call it the southeast corner of the northwest northeast. We can call it the northeast corner of the southwest northeast. We can just keep going. We can call it the northeast corner of the northeast southwest northeast if you want. It totally gets out of hand. In the manual, that's the northeast 16th corner. Now let me back up a bit, and I'll work us into that nomenclature. Are you guys used to using that terminology? Everybody. Am I wasting your time? Okay, let me back through this. We have the section corners. We have the quarter corners, because they divide the section into 4 parts. We have the 16th corners, because they divide the section into 16 parts, 40 acres of whack. We can have the 64th corners, divides a section into 64 parts of 10 acres each. Northeast, southwest, northeast, 10 acres, right? We can cut this in half again and go to the 1/256. Okay, 2.5 acres corner. And you go all the way down to, what is it? 1/1094, is that the? 1024, okay. We won't, I mean, that's down here, that kind of thing. But it goes all the way down there, aliquot parts, so corners of aliquot parts. If I were to write an exam question for you, in fact, there may be one in the practice problems. You've been hired to survey the boundaries of that property right there, and it's described by aliquot parts. Or I tell you, the property of your client is bounded by the following monuments. Let's say this, if this is section 10. North 16th between 10 and 11. Northwest 16th of 10. Southwest 16th. Center west 16th. Center south 16th. South quarter corner. East 16th between 10 and 15. Center east 16th. Quarter corner. I mean, if you understand that well enough, then you can plot those and just draw the lines. But if you have to go to the manual and look it up, it's in there. There's the time again. You don't have time to figure that junk out. If I were writing the question for you, that's what I'd do, to do the nomenclature. Here's another question for you. You've been hired to survey the boundary of these aliquot parts, and I want you to set a monument at every angle point in the boundary. No more. Every angle point gets that's a monument. Okay. So of course here. Of course here. Of course right here. Right here. Right here. Are there any more that we have to have? Which one? Center north 16th. We need one right here, because there's an angle point right here as you transition across that north-south quarter line. Anything else? Center. Right here? Because we have a deflection as you transition across that east-west quarter. Anything else? How about right here? No. Don't need one, right? Because it's a straight line connecting the opposite 16ths, right? It's a straight line. How about here? Do we need one here? No, we don't, because this is a straight line all the way. By definition, we're dividing that northeast quarter by straight lines connecting the opposite 16th corners. No deflection here. But there is a deflection right here. And that's because this is an 8-sided figure. There's a deflection up here. So if this corner point is monumented up here, that draws this 16th up farther north, because it's going midway and online between the quarter section and the north quarter corner. Therefore, there's a deflection there in the boundary. Okay, that's part of this anatomy of the section. This thing is only straight right here. This is straight, and this is straight by definition. This is straight, and this is straight, and this, and this, and this, and this, this, and this. Those lines are straight, but notice I didn't say this is straight. It's not, because this is an 8-sided figure. Okay? So keep that in mind when you're working through these subdivisions, the subdivision of the section. It's not the pretty little square that shows up on diagrams and stuff all the time. We went through the corner nomenclature. I could possibly see this. They would give you they call this corner A, indicate the stamping that should be placed on the cap. You know, that could be a question. How would you stamp this one, anybody? I mean, you probably already know this. You do this stuff all the time. But what's this one called? It's a center east 16th. Okay? Are we clear about that well enough, the nomenclature? Center north 16th, center east, or center west, center south. Okay? This one, on the cap, oh boy. Can you guys see down here below? On the cap, it should be like this. Indicating center to center, the east 16th. Okay? There are diagrams in the manual. Study that so that you understand how to create that kind of thing.
That's center to center, that's not center to a quarter?
Say again?
You have center on both sides. You wouldn't put quarter on the east side?
No, you don't have to. No, that's indicating that you're on the center quarter line. If it's here, that's just the southwest 16th. It's, even though it's a central, a 16th line. No, you wouldn't put that on, not on your cap.
So the cap for the southwest 16th, it would just be SW 16th.
This one would just be SW 16th S10, and maybe not even the section number at that level. Might not even, the manual tells you. I mean, of course, the section number. I don't mean the township and range. In California, what else would you have to have on that cap if you set it? The LS number, right. Don't forget that. Okay. We've already talked about the subdivision of the regular section, the intersection of straight line connecting opposite quarter corners. We've already talked about naming convention, system of marking monuments. Touched on that enough. You guys should go review that in the manual just so you understand the nomenclature. And if they ask you how to stamp the cap for a particular corner point, it would surprise me if they go below the 16th at all. So it's likely going to be the quarter corner. That's what they're going to want to show you, or want you to show them. Sections interior to the township, that was this, everything except for that north and west here. So let's take a look at closing sections. And closing sections would be the 1 through 6, 7, 18, 19, 30, and 31, north and west here. So the difference here being not that much. How would you, geez, come back. That was a, let's look just at section 3 right now. How would you establish a position for the center quarter corner of section 3? Use exactly the same word string method, the rhythmical. The center of section 3 is established at the intersection of straight lines connecting the opposite quarter corners. Nothing's different. I'm going to go from there to there, and there to there. The center of 3 is at that point of intersection, just like the rest of them. And as long as we stay in the south half of 3, everything else is the same. So if we're going to subdivide the southeast quarter of 3, an aliquot part, midpoint to set the center east 16th, midpoint to set the east 16th between 3 and, 11? 10, 3 and 10 rather. midpoint between the south quarter corner and the center quarter corner, midpoint between the southeast and the east quarter corner, intersection of straight lines establishes the southeast 16th of section 3, just like everything else. When we get up here north of the closing half mile, that's where things start to change. Before I get too far, what's the rhythmical, melodical thing that you would say to establish or restore the position for the south quarter corner of 3? It's not that rhythmical. It's midway and online works, or single proportion measurement works. It's midway. It's midpoint of that line. We're going to go from the southeast to 3 to the southeast to the southwest to 3, and we're going to strike the midpoint, assuming the corner point's lost. That would be the method to restore that. If I scroll down just a bit and we look at 10, a regular section, how would you restore the east quarter corner of 10, assuming the southeast and the northeast are there and the east quarter corner is lost? What's the procedure? It's single proportion, or midway and online. All right? However, when we go up into section 3 and those closing tiers, things change. How would you restore the lost east quarter corner of section 3, assuming the southeast and the northeast are existent? Our total distance is 80.15.
40 chains online. Well proportioned, but 40 chains.
The methodical, rhythmical thing you can say is 40 chains proportionate measure between the southeast and the northeast. And you can actually modify that and use that same lyrical thing all the time. I could restore the south quarter corner at 3 at 40.12 chains proportionate measure. Right? I mean, that's... And so you can do it the same thing over here. I'd restore the east quarter corner at 3 at 40 chains proportionate measure. Not midway, because it originally wasn't midway. It's 40 and this is 40-15, so it's 15 links longer on the north end. So that thing's 7.5 links biased out of midpoint. Okay, so that's the difference. These closing tiers, you're going to restore that quarter corner there at 40 chains proportionate measure. If this measures 80-50, then this is going to be something more than 40. You can run the math if you want, but you got that? Okay, so, and then what would be the correct procedure to establish the the south 16th between 2 and 3, that corner right there? Given, okay, if the southeast and the east quarter corner are there, it's going to be midway and online, all right? Whatever that measures, you're going to cut it in half and set that 16th. Not the same with the southeast of lot 1, because it's not at midway. Okay? You can see that. You know, so it's if you had the east quarter corner of 3 and the northeast of 3 existent, and you needed to establish the southeast of lot 1, you can say a 20 chains proportionate measure. 20 chains on the records. 20 is to 40-15 as X is to whatever our measurement is. Okay? Pretty simple stuff. The trick is to make sure you understand you're on a closing tier up here. And if they don't give you any diagrams, and it just says the northeast of 3 and the southeast of 3 have been recovered in their original position, the east quarter corner is lost, the record measurement is 79.42, and you're measuring 80 chains flat, what would be the distance from the southeast to the restored east quarter corner? You know, if you're down in section 10, not giving any other information, it's midway and online. But we need to bias it because of this closing stuff, okay? Simple. The key is to make sure you're aware of where you are. Down in 10 is different than being up in 3 or 4 or 5, especially 6. We got the 6 issue that we'll deal with later. But all right, so given, well, other than this issue about the quarter corner not being midway and online, the subdivision's the same. We're going to establish the center quarter corner, an intersection of the straight lines connecting the opposite quarter corners. We're going to establish, I said, what else do we got to have? I want that center north 16th. Now we fall back to these parenthetical distances and calculate that across to figure out what that distance right there is. And I would set that center north 16th at 20 change proportionate measure. So it's going to be 20 plus whatever that is, or 20 is to the sum of that record as where we need to set it versus what we measure. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, we're going to stay up here in this closing tier. We're going to talk about lots and why they're there, the numbering scheme, the dimensions of the lot. There's those parenthetical distances again. And we already talked about that, so we can skip right on through that. But let's go look at this plat again, why they exist and the numbering scheme. It doesn't have to be up here in the northwest or that north or the west tier for all of this to play so you can see what's going on. Down here in 11, remember one of the original plans of the Land Ordinance Act of 1785 and one of the foundational the foundations of the PLSS is that we want as many normal-sized nominal parcels as they can get. So there they got a 160, they got 80, they got 40. Well, this one's chopped off here by the Rancho boundary, so that one can't be 40. That's a non-rectangular entity, so it becomes a lot. Same thing right here, chopped off. This one, not a lot. It's not a 40 acres because it was cut off. 40 here. Here's the situation where we were talking about elongated sections. Well, they couldn't even have gotten a 40 out of this one because of that corner. But you can see where they could get normal-sized parcels, that's what they got. This would be described the north half of northwest quarter of Section 12. This would be Lot 2, Section 12. This is the northwest of the southeast of Section 12. Still an adequate part. That's where the description would be. Let's talk about this numbering scheme for a second. And I could see that as being a pretty nice little slick question on the exam. They leave these numbers off. And the question would be for you to number those lots. Well, notice the nominal scheme is just like sections are numbered. 1, 2, 3, 4, and there are no more. Same thing, there are no more. Let's go over here where it starts to get a little nasty. See, as we traipse across the township, but still 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, look at Section 4. Here's the booster photonic pattern coming into play again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Turn the plow. Nothing. 5, 6. Nothing. The booster photonic pattern played right into it. It wasn't 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It didn't work that way. All right. Let's go on over here into 6. We'll look at that one. Let's look at 5. The booster photonic pattern again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I could see them, what would be the lot number for that one, and they leave all these off. Well, any of these, yeah, they could leave all these numbers off. They say number the lots in Section 5. And by that scheme, you're going to start in the northeast corner with the booster photonic pattern and track the thing right around. Here's kind of interesting. 5 slops all the way down into here. So 6 is this really wild shaped thing. Oh. the pattern still holds in 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, yes, sir.
Section 5, lot 5 and 7, who decides to not run the 16th line?
The scrivener, the dude in the office, the drafter. Yeah, because he's trying to get his, all that's returned from the field are these lines right here. The guy in the field had nothing to do with the subdivision of it. It was all done on paper. Until we get down, we're going to see some stuff down below here. That's,
Why wouldn't the scrivener just say, like right underneath 5, call that little tiny triangle 6?
he could have.
Oh, okay.
He could have. Here you go doing the hypotheticals on me. No, he could have.
Yeah.
And it would have been just as correct. For some reason, he was trying to hold, well, I can't tell you what his acres are.
Right.
Well, I don't know what they are. It's going to be whatever's left over after you get the mineral survey out, and you cut that 40 out, and which,
How did they know where those mineral survey areas are on this map? Did they survey that when they ran the lines?
which these mineral surveys,
Yeah.
they actually went out there and set a U.S. location marker, stopped it down. Any mineral surveyors in here, or guys? You deal with it, right? This very likely, correct me if I'm wrong, would have been done before this work had been done. Is that true?
Before the land was taken back.
Okay, so the mineral claim was, then the mineral claim and the patent was done before all of this work was done. So that's senior. They would have stopped down this monument on top of a ridge or something that where they could see, and I guess monument the fire out of it, in theory, right? No. And then they'd make their tie, which would be in the field notes, and then they'd bebop around these things. And then when the PLSS was extended, they made this tie right here to the land corner. Okay, so they did know where they were. Yes, sir?
If they would have numbered the southeast corner of 5 as 6, would that have gone to 7, and then 6 would have turned into 8?
Yep.
Just because they were separated by the mineral survey?
Yep, very likely. So the key is to track this thing boostrophodonically.
And then if you have something that segregates the whole thing, then even though 6 is the whole square there, the mineral survey line is there, and 7 contains the whole part, you still go back.
That's right. You're going to track left boostrophodonically through this thing. Look at section 7. Start in the northeast corner, nothing. Section 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Same boostrophodonic pattern all the way through. Yes, sir?
Those lots of the patent done prior to the actual map creation, is that where they're coming from? The lot numbers? Or where are they coming from?
The lot numbers?
Yeah.
The scrivener did that. He cut out as many nominal parts as he could get out of this thing. There's an 80, 160 of this town site thing's an invading non-rectangular entity. But notice he didn't make this, try to make that something. He got 80 acres out of it, and then the leftover. The dude drawing the plat is the one that made those decisions. And I'm sure he had, guidance from the cadastral chief through instructions, but.
On section 8, how come, after lot 1, that little triangle area underneath the diagram, that's not a lot?
Point to
18.
me. Where? Oh, it's part of the town site survey. This was cut out for a town site, so that's why. The same reason the mineral surveys weren't cut into lots. I mean, there's something else. Okay. Anything else on the lot numbering? Does that make sense? I've been doing this for 3 decades and some change, and I just now got that. It just now, not right now, but I mean, clarity came in the last 4 or 5 years. Actually, yes, sir.
I have one more quick question on your sketch there. Are there instructions in the manual that say that you need to set all the 16th corners in that also? Or how do you know when to stop monumenting it? Because you need all the 16th corners.
Your client hired you to Your client hired you to survey the boundaries of this red parcel, and I want my angle points monumented. That's what he said. I want all my angle points monumented. 'Cause I want to build a fence. And if you just monumented this one, the north 16th between 10 and 11, and the northwest 16th of 10, and didn't monument this one, and he builds his fence, he's not on his line. Because it's either doing, it's doing this, or it's doing this, depending on whether this is north or south.
But you're not required on the north section line to set those monuments at the 16th line?
Oh, up here?
Because you had to figure where those are.
You don't have to set them on the ground.
The client going to pay you for it? Well, then think about that. You know, your local jurisdiction might have something to say about that. There could be corner record requirements in your local jurisdiction. But I mean, if I know where it is versus monumenting, so two different things. I mean, I could show on a record of survey that line and cutting that at midway and online for the 16th and calculating. I mean, I think that's valid. Right, so. Anything else? Did somebody have something else about this lots? Yes, ma'am.
As you come in on section 7, heading west on the south side, are those Cs for closing corner as they come into that town site? How come there's
This?
two? Yeah.
That's a closing corner.
Oh, CC for both.
That's right. Now let me see where I am in the PowerPoint here. We already talked about this. The northeast of 1 doesn't exist unless to the contrary can be shown. The record reflects that. But if it's lotted, it's not an adequate part. And we talked about this east half of Lot 1, the falling back to state rules. If you're going to subdivide that Lot 1, Section 1, you're better off, the easterly 600 feet of Lot 1, or 660 feet, some baloney like that. You're better off with an of or an ly description instead of saying east half Lot 1. That's because that's opening the door for problems. All right. Okay, this is something that until I did the CFEDS program, it was a bit confusing to me, because you'll see a legal description that'll say the east half, southwest quarter, fractional section 18. You see that, and people have called that north and west tier fractional because it's not normal. I mean, not a regular section. The quarter corners are not set at midway and online on that north tier, or midway and online on the south boundaries of the west tier. They're 40 change proportionate measure. So, but the deal about fractional, whether it's fractional or not, makes a big difference for how you subdivide the section, and I guarantee it'll be an exam problem. It just absolutely is going to be. So let's look at those. We'll look back at this plat. I mean, this plat actually, sample plat's from the manual of 73, and I'm using that one just because I like it. They have a little more deflections in the lines and some disparities. The new one is a little more perfect and doesn't give me room to work much on trying to demonstrate some things to you. Okay, so you tell me if the definition of fractional or not, a section is going to be regular, or it's going to be a regular section, not fractional, if the quarter corners could have been set or were set. Okay? Otherwise, it's fractional. So what about Section 8? Were the quarter corners set on Section 8? So that's a regular section. How about Section 16? Regular or fractional? That's a regular section. The quarter corners were set. That's where. How about section, how about section 3? Regular or fractional? It's regular. The 4 quarter corners were or could have been set. They were set. They were set. Now, here's where something the contrary can be shown. If that north line of section 3 is the standard parallel, that north quarter corner of 3 might not have been set, because they didn't retrace that line for 3. It had already been run. However, it could have been set. The dimensions are there for it to have been set. Okay? Regular section. You subdivide a regular section by connecting the opposite quarter corners with straight lines. Period. 10's the same, 3's the way I just showed you that. Same way. All right? So if it's regular, that's how you're going to subdivide. How about section 4? Regular or fractional? It's regular. All the quarter corners were set or could have been set. The measurements are there to do it. What is the record distance from the southwest of 4 to the west quarter corner? 40, right? So that's regular. It's not fractional for the purposes of subdividing, and you're going to see how this starts to come into play. Section 5, regular or fractional? The question you got to ask yourself, were the quarter corners, either they were set or they could have been set? And they were, right? So this is a regular section. Even though you have this monkey business going around in here, I can connect the opposite quarter corners with straight lines to establish the center quarter corner. Right? That's a regular section. Oh, come on. Cooperate with me here, dude. Sorry, guys. Section 20, regular or fractional? Section 20, were the quarter corners set or could have been set? That's a regular section. You're going to subdivide this thing by connecting straight lines, the intersection of straight lines to the opposite quarter corners. That's a regular section. Subdivide it just like always. Section 19, regular or fractional? This one's fractional because there is no geometry there to get you to, I want you to ignore this, to get you to where that north quarter corner goes. They didn't measure it. They didn't set it. You can't set it. You can't set it from the information you have. That's a fractional section. So what's the difference now? And ignore this. I'll take my hand back. I'll talk about that in a second. That SMC is not there for this question. So how would you establish the center quarter corner of 19 since we don't have the north quarter corner to pull to? What's that?
Weighted bearing to the south quarter corner, the intersection of the opposing east and west quarter.
The fancy word is by weighted mean bearing. That's the way you're going to see this. And I think it shows up that way essentially word for word in the manual. So, the weighted mean bearing issue, well, let's tackle that in a second. Let's keep going on these. Because this is what you're looking for. Is it fractional or is it not fractional? How about 30? Fractional or regular? All right. And how would you establish the center quarter corner of 30? It's the usual old thing. Intersection of straight lines connecting the opposite quarter corners. All right? It doesn't bother me that it's short. Yeah, it's 78.35 on the southbound or 78.21 on the north. It doesn't bother me that it's short as far as that center quarter corner goes. Now, once I start working on the west half of 30, now we've got a different ball game. All right, so that one is regular.
What about section 7 with the, had a town site?
So I'm sorry?
Section 7 had the town site over the quarter corner, is that because it could have been set and it's still regular?
I thought, why did you have to ask me that? I think that one would still be regular. We'd have to go over to the inset and see what they did. If they showed us the geometry inside, and I'm sure they did. We can look if you insist. How about section 33, regular or fractional? And ignore this FMC ignore that. That makes a difference. Regular, right? The quarter corners are there. Section 35, regular or fractional? Connect the opposite quarter corners of straight lines. They are there, right? (26) This one's regular. Whoa. There's the total, 80 chains. So this would be at midway and online between those two if you restored it. That one is regular. The quarter corner could have been set. It's just sitting in the middle of the river. They measured it. Now, how did they measure that 2410? What kind? What? Distance meter? Yeah. No, they did a triangle solution across the thing. They would have run a base. They would have set a point right there at the meander corner, actually. And then they would have sent a flagman across the way and put him on line. And then they would have turned a 90 and run a baseline over here, 5 chains or 10 chains or 20 chains, and then they would have measured the bearing and solved the triangle. That's how they would have gotten across the river. But that'll throw you. You got to look and see. You could arrive at that quarter corner. It's halfway. It's 40 chains from here. And if you sum these up, I mean, they all add up to 80 chains flat. Okay? So, how would you establish the center quarter corner of 26? It's the intersection of straight lines connecting the opposite quarter corners. This one I have to calculate. But it's there for me to do. Okay?
That's why you're saying ignore those other ones on the lakes.
I'm sorry?
Right. SMC is something.
Special meander corner. Well, let's talk about those beings we're here. On the section lines, notice there's a meander corner here. If we were to restore, we need to restore the south quarter corner of 26. And it's 8006 all the way across is the record measurement. And 4003 to the quarter corner. Well, it's lost, but we find the southwest of 26. We find that meander corner, and let me go ahead and do it so you guys will know which way we're flowing here. If all I tell you is meander corner, south line, section 26, right bank of the river, which one am I talking about? That's right, because there's the direction of flow. That would either be in the notes, or will be in the notes, and it's likely going to be on the plat. But here they tell you the direction of flow. So that's right bank of the river, left bank of the river. It's as you're riding in a canoe downstream, it's left and right. Okay, so you could see a legal description that, well, I've seen them erroneously written as the southwest quarter, northeast quarter, section 26, left bank of the river. I've seen that kind of stuff before, but it's more correctly lot 1. So left bank, right bank. So we've recovered the southwest of 26. We've recovered the meander corner on the south line of 26, left bank of the river, and the right bank of the river. So I have both of these. And I've recovered that southeast of 26. How would you restore the position for the lost south quarter corner of 26? I'm fixing to lay one on you that'll take you all the way through the exam and will not fail you. Are you going to, I mean, if it was normal, I mean, we already said this is not a fractional section, regular section. So would you do that midway and online between the southwest and the southeast of 26? What would you use for control to restore the south quarter corner of 26?
The left meander corner, left bank meander corner.
We're going to use the meander corner on the left bank and the section corner. So we're going to restore this thing as 4003 is to 4813 as x is to our measured. Here's the rule that will never fail you on the exam, and there are some exceptions to the contrary that can be shown actually on the exam side of things, and it regards closing corners. But here's something to take this to the bank. Never, 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 now let's know, never pass control. Because on the exam, I guarantee you, if this is the question, they're going to, and you generate coordinates, they give you coordinates, they give you courses, and they want the coordinates of that south quarter corner, they're going to give you as one of the choices midway and online. And that's not the case, because when you do that, you've passed 2 points of control, and you've rendered those of lesser importance than this, and that's not true. These are points on the line. They're monuments to the line. There could be here's one for you that doesn't show on the plat. This is why you have to have the field notes. It'd be a bearing tree or a line tree right here. Positively identified line tree that's up here. That's an angle point in the line. It's a monument to the line, plain and simple. So if you have a recovered line tree right here, now how would you restore that south quarter corner? It's the line tree to the meander corner. You don't even touch these. All right? So there's the meander corner. How would they have established that corner in the original survey? Think meander lines. And I just say that to throw you off. It doesn't. When they set that meander corner, they came here north on true line. Here we go. North on true line between 34 and 35. Set the quarter corner between 34 and 35, from which a white oak, 12 inches, north 42 east, bears north 22 east, 16 lengths. They give the accessory ties. He continues, at 80 chains, set the corner to 26, 27, 34, and 35. Marks his accessories. He goes east on random, and then west on true. So when he's coming, he misses this corner. So he's coming back on a true line, on the corrected line. At 1374, he hits what he believes to be the riparian boundary, but it's not. Yeah, you're right, ordinary high water. You're right. What he believes it to be. So he stabs a monument down right there. He makes his way across the river by measurement or angle calculations, and he sets on true line another meander corner on that meander line, on that riparian, the ordinary high water mark, and he continues and closes out. So in theory, these 4 monuments are all on the same line. Actually 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are all on the same line. This could have just as well been a line tree. It could have been a line point. It could have been a reference point on the line to hold the direction. They're all the same thing. That's all this is doing, is holding the direction of this line. Now, what's the significance of the easting of that meander corner? And your response was that it's used to proportion back for the quarter corner. Yes, that's what we would use it for. He meandered this thing, trying to approximate the ordinary high water mark so that they could calculate acreages and they could segregate out the water body, which would have been titled to the state if it was navigable, right? this meander corner approximates that riparian boundary. There's no legal significance for it whatsoever. The ordinary high water mark of that water boundary is the riparian boundary of Lot 4, not that meander corner, not these meander points along the traverse. All he's doing is trying to chase that thing so they can run acreage. The real boundary is the true riparian boundary, the ordinary high water mark, or whatever that, if this was a non-navigable body of water, it'd be the center of the stream, or Thalweg, or the thread. Oftentimes those are used interchangeably. They're not necessarily the same thing. Midway between the banks. I mean, you'll see that sometimes. But this is used to control the direction of the line, not its legal terminus. I'll be damned. Just like a closing corner up here. We don't have any on this picture. Just like a closing corner up against the township line of sorts. The real boundary's over here on the riparian. This holds the direction, and it's also a fixed point that we could proportion back from. Okay, so my point is never, never do 5 of them. Never, 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 never. Pass control. All right? If this was lost, where's your next point? The meander corner on the right bank of the river, right? You wouldn't go to here. If both of those are gone, the river's come out of its banks and torn it all out, where would you go now? We're going right here, right? Okay, does that make sense? You're going to the nearest control on each side, and that just happens to be the nearest control. Okay, let's talk about closing corners up here a bit. Some more closing corners. We didn't talk about weighted mean bearing, did we? Let's go back to that just a second. All right, first, let me address the special meander corner. You asked about that. That special meander corner marks the terminus of this line. So when if you subdivide 19 with everything in place as the official survey, you run from the south quarter corner to the special meander corner. You run from the west quarter corner to the east quarter corner. That point of intersection is the center quarter corner. I didn't want that in the picture at the time. But what they would have done here, apparently, they would have done some calculations to determine the direction of that line, what the field surveyor, what he wanted it to be, and he would have stabbed a monument down there, just like that meander corner right there, just like what we talked about over on the river. See, so there's one, holding the direction of the line. Holding the direction of the line, holding the direction of the line. The special meander corners are going to be interior to the section. The meander corners will be on the section lines themselves. Okay? So if you see that, you're going to hold that for your direction. But let's take this out. This doesn't exist. All right? For the purposes of our discussion. How would we establish the center quarter corner of 19? Well, let me ask you, fractional or regular? It's a fractional section. Okay, so we don't have opposite quarter corners to tie and intersect. So we've already talked about the fancy words, weighted mean bearing. That's what we're going to do. So it doesn't mean parallel to this, because that is not parallel to this by 5 minutes. All right, so we can't say, we could say parallel to that, we could say parallel to this. We could say, come over here 40 chains. We could do all kinds of things, which is not correct. The correct way is by weighted mean bearing. So do you want to go through the calculations? I won't actually add the numbers, but I'll show you how to do this. All right? So this isn't working very well. Oh, yeah, let's do that. Cool. Thank you. I'm glad you did that.
You got it?
I think so.
Okay, Clint? Good.
Always wanted to do that. All right, we're back in business. Now if I can find my pens.
There's a marker right there.
That's
That's what you need.
That sucker is huge. Okay, we have section 19 we're going to deal with here. I'm doing this just to help you see the section outline. That doesn't exist. Okay? Now I take that back. It does exist across the lake, but they still didn't set the north quarter corner. This is the line between 18 and 19 right there. Notice lot 5, lot 1, that's the line between 18 and 19. It's a very small amount. It doesn't enter into what we're doing. Okay? So we have section 19. The Mander corner's not there for this exercise, okay? So we can establish the east-west quarter section line by connecting a straight line to the opposite quarter corners, right? We got that part of it. We have the south quarter corner. We just don't know what direction to run it on, with the special Mander corner not being there. So, we've done a retracement and we've recovered all of these corners. That's a Mander corner. What's that?
We're having a lot of luck if we recovered all that.
Well, you're right. You're right. Well, we'll work on that if you like. Okay, this is our scenario, right? Mander corner, quarter corner's in, section quarter, Mander corner's in. Not quite made it to the section corner, okay? So, and we come out here and we retrace this, and let's say this is course A and B. We can do it like this if you like. And I've just put those there so I don't have to write bearings and all that kind of junk. Okay, now the weighted mean bearing calculation. This is with our measurements. I don't care what that says. Has nothing to do with what I'm about to do. I'm going to do this over here on the side. I'm going to start at A, and I'm going to run to B with do this in your AutoCAD, or you can do it with regular Kogo. Then I'm going to run to, this is course A, and course B, and then I'm going to stack course E on top of it, and I'm going to stack course F on top of that, and then I'm going to inverse from here all the way down to here. That inverse is the weighted mean bearing. So you're going to come here to the south quarter corner, you're going to run that inverse until you intersect. And there's your center quarter corner. Okay?
So you can't use just B or F. You have to use A, B, E, and F to do that.
That's right. If they were all perfectly parallel, we could use the parallel to one or the other. But they're not. Because remember, this is an 8-sided, this section right here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sides. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sides. Deflection at every one of these. This measured bearing will be different than that one. Guarantee it. If that's lost, it won't be.
You couldn't set the midpoint between the south line of F and the south line of B, and then just use B and F for the midpoint?
You can do it, and I'd recommend against it on the exam.
I'm just asking.
No, that's not the proper procedure. This is the fractional section. The quarter corners could not be set or were not set. Therefore, the proper procedure to subdivide is with a weighted mean bearing. Okay, so yeah, you could come up with a solution, and there's probably 100 solutions, 100, maybe 10,000 monuments out there that have been set at midpoint here. It doesn't seem unreasonable to do that. Hell, if I was going to do it at all, I mean, that's not really not valid because this isn't at midpoint. You see that? Maybe, well, if this body of water invaded here, now that might be a little more valid. I mean, it's not correct, but I mean, it's a little more reasonable. Right. But what you're doing, the weighting part, you're giving this half mile more weight than that little 4.5 change on the effect of the weighted weighted mean. You're giving that half mile more effect than that 3790 distance. And rightly so. It influences the whole more so. This influences the whole more so than this does. If these were all exactly the same bearings that you measure on the ground, or let's say this is lost, here we go. If this is lost, what are we going to do now? We're going to restore this at 4.5 change proportionate measure from the meander corner. What if that meander corner is lost? You talking about this one? Oh, well, I'm starting to mix things. If everything along this line is lost, how are we going to restore that? If we have this monument and nothing on either one of those, how would you restore that? You can give that a try. I wouldn't recommend it. No, this is 1 point control now. This would be record bearing and distance. It's a 1 point control exercise. Now we have nothing, this meander corner right here didn't depend on these. Now these were tied through. These meanders came through, they tied through this, held it. So it's valid to look at that. But how often have you ever recovered the meander corners themselves? Or, that they didn't monument the things. You know what I'm saying? So
you're saying to restore that to quarter corner, you're just starting at the south corner, you're going north, 5 minutes west, 40 chains, bang, there it is?
if this is lost and this is lost, we have nothing else to work with. So it's 1 point control. 1 point control is record bearing and distance. With that, the true meridian being established at that corner point. You can't have true meridian over here, traverse over here a half mile, because now we got convergence in play. We need to have it right here, and then I'm going to go north balls 5 minutes west, and I'm going to stab that dude at 40 chains, and I'm done with it. It doesn't happen very often. But
what if you wanted to further put in the meander corner, restore the meander corner?
I'd keep going. I'd push it up there 4.5 chains.
Okay.
I'm done with it. It doesn't define the boundaries of Lynn's Lake. You know what I'm saying? Because the true boundary of Lynn's Lake is the riparian boundary, not that measured thing. But
I just wanted to see what you do if you had to restore.
I mean, it's twisted, isn't it? I mean, holy smoke! I would think we could figure something out to do something.
What if you had the centers?
What's that?
What if you had the centers of either 19 or 20?
What if we had the centers of 19 and 20?
Yeah.
If they set those in the original survey, you hold them. I don't give a rat's rear if they're off in Egypt somewhere. No. If they monumented anything in here, that's an original corner point. So we'd run from here to there. Center quarter corner's in. If they set that one and they set this one, there's an angle point there. Tough luck, Charlie. Otherwise, this is a straight line from here to here, and that would be at midpoint. Because this is 2020, right? Because of that. Okay? Yes, sir.
Sorry, not to what if it's death, but what if you had the east quarter corner of 19, but not that meander corner?
Uh-huh.
Everything else you had in your little diagram up here, how would you weight that bearing, or would you just not use that top little 4.5? Or would you do single control there?
I would restore the meander corner position, if nothing else, than in theory. Well, here we're getting into reality versus exactly what the book says. To restore that meander corner at 4.5 chains north of the east quarter corner, it's 1 point control. So if I establish that east quarter corner at north balls 5 minutes west, 40 flat, and I set that monument, and then I come back 5 years later, and I want to set that meander corner. Somebody else set that quarter corner. I'd restore that meander corner at north 0 degrees, 5 minutes west, 4.5 chains.
Would you have to get the center of 19 though? Would you have to establish that meander corner if it was missing?
To get your weighted mean bearing of that north-south quarter line, yeah, you would. Okay. Now, in reality, now if you did it all in one pass, I would, you could pass right on through the quarter corner. I mean, you got to know where it is anyway to do that east-west quarter section line, right? So I'd calculate that, but I'd shove that whole 44.5 chains through on the same bearing. That's what the record says. Right. If you find the quarter corner, and I need to restore the meander corner, I go north balls 5 minutes west, 4.5 chains, single point control, and restore that meander corner. And I don't care where that quarter corner is in easting.
Right.
You know, so that's how that meander corner could flop around on you. This is one of the rare instances where we're going to use some of this calculated junk out there on the ground. Normally, you do what the record says. It's all right there in front of you, but not with a weighted mean bearing. We have to retrace that line, and then we stack them up just like I did here on the diagram and do the long inverse. And notice your record courses have absolutely no bearing on this whatsoever, no pun intended. It's what we measure, all right? That's the weighted mean bearing. How about, this thing can get really nasty, and you gotta really keep your head screwed on straight. How about the meander corners? Let's say that the special meander corners do not exist. How about the center quarter corner 17? How would you establish that position? Is it regular or is it fractional? Okay, it's a fractional section. Therefore, we're dealing with weighted mean bearings. Remember, this doesn't exist. When that exists, we have a different ballgame. We have something to tie to now. This doesn't exist, though, but that does. All right, so.
So if you had two of those gone, I mean, for a minute, I know.
No, go ahead.
You don't want to play with us, but let's say Lynn's Lake is a little bit further east, and we don't have the south quarter of 17, then we're dealing with weighted mean bearings in two different directions, right? Am I wrong on that?
If the Lynn's Lake intersected at 38 chains instead of at 40, we'd use there'd be a meander corner there.
Right.
Okay.
So we would use the weighted mean bearing going, because we're supposed to intersect those two lines to get the center.
No, we'd use this 38 chains stacked on top of that 40 chains, stacked on top of that 40 chains, and we're done with it. And then do the long inverse.
And then going
North south, I have the quarter corners.
But no,
Oh.
What if you don't have the south
Okay.
quarter? Then you're doing mean bearings both ways, right?
Yep, that's exactly right. We're going to stack this half mile on top of that half, or this, then that, then that. Long inverse gives you that direction. You're exactly right. If this invaded deeper and that was 38 chains, we don't have the quarter corner there, so it's weighted mean bearings both directions.
Wouldn't you have to do the south line before you do the other line?
Would you have to do the south line of 17?
Because if you have two of them with weighted mean bearings, one of them you've got to establish first, right?
You're going to have to do, you're going to have to do something, yeah.
So would you do the south line first? And establish that point?
Well, remember the scenarios were at 38 chains, not at 43.20. Right, the quarter corner's not there. There's a meander corner there, in theory.
I guess I don't see which line you would do first or if it would matter.
Oh, it doesn't matter. There's two different components. You're going to have the east-west weighted mean bearing to get this line, and we're going to use this for 38 chains plus that half mile plus that half mile, and I separate them. I don't just say at the mile because there's an angle point right there. There absolutely is if you recover it. That gets this one. Now we've got to turn around and do the north-south. So we're going to do this plus that will give us this line. Two different steps, yes, or some.
Say the bearings aren't gonna change because they're already there. It's just your distance it over what's gonna make your difference, right? That's why it doesn't matter which way you do first, north or south.
Your record, well, I'm not sure I understand what you're
He
asking.
was asking which one to do first, but the bearings are already in. You're not establishing, you're not changing a bearing by establishing the new point, right?
Well, let's say the men, here we go, our hypotheticals are going to run off on tangent, but it's not bad. Let's say the water body invades, you're the responsible for this. The water body invades, the water body invades at 38 chains. The meander corner is lost. What are we going to use for the direction of that? How are we going to restore that line so that we can do a weighted mean bearing on that east-west quarter line? That's single point control. There's nothing else to work with. So we come right here. We go north 8954 west with the true meridian being established right here. Well, we establish true north with sunshot or star shot, turn 8954 to the left, and go 4320 and set the doggone thing. And that, I mean, if we had to do that, I don't have to, I mean, I already have my bearing. Maybe that's where you're headed. I already have my bearing for a part of the component to do this weighted mean, because I had to restore this. You're right. I see what you're saying.
Okay, so I have another question. Sort of treading lightly here. You said the meander corners don't control the terminus of a line. They simply control the direction when they're up against the water body. The special meander corners are the same, yes?
They are on the meanders, but they control the direction of the line. You're exactly right.
So they don't control the terminus because the terminus is still dependent upon the riparian boundary.
And the reason the riparian boundary is ambulatory, it moves, so we can't control that boundary.
Okay.
All right? Yes, ma'am.
So what is the difference between a meander corner and a special meander?
Meander corner is going to be on the section lines. Special meander corner is interior to the section. Okay, that's the difference. They would have had to done some calculations or actually run some lines in the field to be able to determine the location of that dude on the north-south quarter line. But it's kind of cool. If it's there, then we don't have to get into this weighted mean bearing thing. We have something to tie to. All right? Okay, we have 7 minutes before lunch. You know what I do in San Diego, we call it the bonus round. We're supposed to start at 6:30, and we start at 6 with the bonus round. So people show up at 6, and we work straight through till 9. If you guys want to skip lunch, I'm game, but nobody really wants to skip lunch, do you? So, okay. Okay, we just talked about the center quarter line and others on weighted mean bearing. Oh, we can finish up right here, this others thing. Here we go. Let's look at 17 again, and we've established the center quarter corner of 17 by intersection of weighted mean bearings. All right? Where would you set, how would you establish the position for the center west 16th of 17?
Straight line.
I have this corner point. We just established it. I have a direction. We just established that. How would you put in the southeast corner of Lot 1, Section 17? What is that record distance? Well, it's 20 by, yeah, but that,
But wouldn't that distance change by the weighted mean bearing? Or are you still assuming it's what?
but this doesn't exist. 20 chains. There was a total there at one time. So, I mean, you're saying go record 20 chains and be done with it? Maybe. But wouldn't it be more in keeping with the spirit of the thing for that to be 20 chains proportionate measure? But how do we know what that total distance is? We don't know what that total distance is. Here's another possibility. And I think this is probably too complex to be on the exam, but we'll kill 5 more minutes dealing with this. Are you okay on the, okay. Because this is another possibility. You could run this on a weighted mean and intersect. I already have this one, weighted mean bearing. I have this one, so I'm going to do this stacked on top of that. The long inverse gives me the direction of that line. I know where that goes, midway and online. And I intersect. That way, that distance doesn't enter into anything. I'm protecting the plat that way. You see the logic of that? Let's go down here. This is the one that's going to tell the story, perhaps better.
If you have the center of section 17, but you don't have a special meander corner, and you create the north-south weighted mean bearing, what are you going to intersect it with? Record?
Okay, I already have this line. I have this corner. I just established this one. I have the direction of that line, right? No special meander corner. I have this corner point because I established the center quarter corner from it. So I have this bearing, and I have this bearing because I used it to weight this one. So what I'm suggesting as a possibility is this would be a weighted mean bearing. I'm going to run from that midpoint, and I'm going to calculate the weighted mean bearing with this line plus this line. And I'm going to establish the direction of that line, let the point of intersection fall as it falls. See up here, that record distance was 20 chains. That record distance is 20 chains. So in theory, this is parallel to that, but how it doesn't work that way. But the weighted mean bearing does follow the procedure. So this is the kind of stuff lawsuits are made of. When you get into the end.
East-west line from the east quarter corner through the center quarter corner, through because the special meander corner is missing?
If this is missing, we established that on a weighted mean. Remember, that's when it was 38 chains? Okay. We did, well, you can leave it alone if you want. It doesn't matter. Well, here we go. Let's leave this thing leave the picture like this. We established the center quarter corner, north quarter corner to south quarter corner. We're locked on that one. We do this east-west center quarter corner on weighted mean bearing, 4320 plus the 40 plus the 40, long inverse. And I have the direction of this line, so now we have that. We're back to the same scenario again. So I think it's a valid consideration. What BLM would do there, I don't know. When you get in a situation like that, call them. I'm sure that won't work on the test, but yes, sir.
You had said earlier that because they had called out that 80, that was protecting the map by making that 80. So would that give that 20 chains and then the rest falls into the lake?
Perhaps. The question was, since this was called out as 80 acres, this is implied, this is 20 chains. So wouldn't it be a valid solution to come over here 20 chains and let that excess or deficiency just be whatever it is? Yes, it is valid. It is valid. That's why I don't think this example would show up on the test, because it can't be that sophisticated. Okay, we have 1 minute, I suppose. Are you okay? Let's do this one right here before we get out of here. South line lot 1, section 20. How are you going to do that? Well, where are we going to get the south line, the southeast corner of lot 1? Is the section fractional or regular? I can tell you, I'm going to tell you it's regular, but let me just go ahead so you have all the parts. Regular or fractional? It's regular, right? So we have all 4 quarter corners. We can get that one. We can set the southeast corner of lot 1, midway and online between the center and the north quarter corner, right? No problem. How are we going to... So we have the southeast of lot 1. Farmer Brown says, well, my neighbor's a real jerk. I need to build a fence along the south line of my property, lot 1. I need that staked. What are you going to do? here's what and this is really good stuff, guys. I'm glad we have the time to do this. I need a weighted mean bearing right here. Does that need to enter into the mix? I suggest to you it does not. I want that 3.2 chains, and I want that right there. I'm going to stack that 320 on top of whatever that is, do the long inverse, and that's the direction of my line. All right? Same thing right here, east line of lot 1. I would weight a mean bearing between these. Well, actually, I'd use this, and I would use that. All right? After I establish the midway and online for the corner point, okay? Okay, guys, it's time to pull the plug. 2 o'clock, back here.
Lunch from 12 to 1, and then 1 to 2 is the opening ceremonies, and then back here at 2.